In 1972, Ford Australia did something unprecedented. They built a muscle car that was entirely their own. No American hand-me-downs, no compromised US castoffs. The Ford Falcon XA GT was Australian engineering, Australian design, and pure Australian rebellion on four wheels. For just 18 months, this beast roamed the streets of Down Under with a pounding 351 cubic inch V8 heart and attitude to match. Today, it remains one of the rarest, most collectible, and most significant performance cars ever produced on Australian soil. This is the story of the Falcon XA GT, a car that shouldn't have existed, but did, and in doing so, left an indelible mark on automotive history. To understand the XA GT, we must first understand the obsession that birthed it. The Ford Falcon arrived in Australia in 1960, but it wasn't Australian. The North American Ford Falcon quietly disappeared in 1970, its Australian counterpart going on to a long and eventful career. For over a decade, Australian engineers had been tweaking and refining American-designed cars to survive in a land of endless highways, brutal heat, and unforgiving roads. But they were tired of that compromise. In 1968, Ford's Dearborn headquarters delivered a shocking ultimatum. The US Falcon was going the way of the dodo, so there'd be no US parent model to use as a basis. This could have spelled the end of the Falcon in Australia. Instead, it sparked a revolution. Enter the visionaries. Ford Australia introduced a new model that was not only its most successful Falcon, but also a design that was, for the first time, 100% dinky-D Australian, with no reworked US hand-me-down panels. Sold between March 1972 and September 1973, the XA series was the first Falcon to be designed with assistance from Ford's US headquarters and manufactured in Australia. Designed by Jack Telnack, it featured an entirely new body which was larger and more roomy than that of its XY series predecessor, giving it the Coke bottle look. This wasn't just a refresh. This was independence. When the XA finally rolled into showrooms, it turned heads. The XA Falcon burst onto the scene with its distinctive range of paint colors, with purple and wild plum being popular. The XA Falcon hardtop bore a strong resemblance to the 1970-71 Ford Torino and shared its frameless window doors with the utility and panel van variants. But the real statement came from the GT variant. The XA Falcon saw the return of a two-door hardtop, which allowed the new XA GT to appear in 2- and 4-door body styles for the first time. The hardtop, in particular, would become legendary. Engine choices were the same as the XY, the 3.3 and single or double-barrel carbed 4.1-liter 6s, plus the 4.9 302ci and the 5.8 351ci V8s, the latter with a 2-barrel carb as standard or a 4-barrel for the GT. For the GT, the 351 cubic inch V8 produced 300 horsepower at 5,400 RPM and 380 foot-pounds of torque at 3,400 RPM. While the 351 cubes remained, the engine package was quite a bit milder than that on the earlier XY Phase 3. The Lopi camshaft was toned down, and the carburetor became a more road car-appropriate item. But make no mistake, this was still serious muscle. The XA GT's moment in the spotlight was ferociously bright but mercifully short. Early in 1972, Ford released the XA Falcon with the GT in sedan and hardtop versions. Ford built 1,868 sedans from January 1972 to September 1973 and 891 hardtops between July 1972 and September 1973. In total, almost one-third of the XA GT models were hardtops out of a total of 2,759 units sold. It was a limited assault, but what an assault it was. On the racetrack, the XA GT immediately stamped its authority. The XA GT continued the race-winning tradition set by the earlier models, culminating in the Moffat-Geoghegan-Bathurst victory in 1973, followed by the 1974 Goss-Bartlett win in pouring rain, making the XA GT the single most successful GT at Bathurst. The hardtop's flared rear quarters, bulging rear flanks accommodated wider tires, giving it a decisive advantage on the circuit. In the street, it was a king, but Australia's cultural temperature was dropping. Most argue the Falcon GT brand reached its zenith with the Phase 3 GT-HO in 1971. After that, the Wowzers drove the performance sedan movement underground, with Ford's stillborn XA-based Phase 4 model already in pre-production at the time. In the decade following the happy-go-lucky 1960s, the cultural mood turned somber. Road safety was at the forefront of public opinion, and motorists and enthusiasts noted what was happening overseas. Many saw anti-emissions legislation in the latter half of the decade as the final nail in the coffin for performance cars. The promised Phase 4 GT-HO, destined to be a fire-breathing monster, would never be born. 3 prototypes and 1 actual production model of the Phase 4 were built. Legends, lies, and rumors of these 4 cars persist to this day, but they are the most collectible of all GTs. The XA GT's reign was mercifully extended through the XB generation, which arrived in September 1973 and ran through July 1976. The GT was available for the first time as a swoopy 2-door coupe as well as a sedan, but the spark was dimming. The XA had set the gold standard. When the XC finally arrived in 1976, the GT name had disappeared. The golden age of the Australian muscle car, born with the XR in 1967 and perfected in these XA and XB years, was over, though the legacy would resurface. The GT name wouldn't return until the launch of the limited edition US Falcon GT in 1992. Yet the XA and XB Falcons achieved something almost no muscle car ever does. They transcended the track and showroom to become cultural monuments. Global recognition came through the 1979 film Mad Max, which used a modified 1973 XB GT coupe built into the Pursuit Special. Its return in Mad Max 2 reinforced the XA XB XC series image as Australia's signature muscle coupe. That car, that single, menacing interceptor, did more for the Falcon's legend than 1,000 race wins. It became the machine that wouldn't die, a symbol of Australian defiance and survival. And at its heart, Australian engineering, Australian steel, Australian muscle. Today, the Ford Falcon XA GT commands a place of reverence in the automotive collector world. Just 129 473 XAs were built during the limited production run from March 1972 to September 1973, making them quite rare cars to find these days. Among those, the GT variants, particularly the hardtops, are treasured. Good examples fetch substantial sums. Pristine, documented originals command 6 figures. That short production window, combined with the car's cultural significance and racing pedigree, has made the XA GT one of Australia's most sought-after classics. Collectors hunt them with the passion of archaeologists searching for lost treasures. Each surviving example is documented, celebrated, and preserved with meticulous care. The significance of the XA GT runs deeper than horsepower or lap times. The XA Falcon was Ford Australia's most successful Falcon, and also a design that was, for the first time, 100% dinky-die Australian. It represented a nation confident enough to stand alone, to trust its own engineers, to build something that didn't need American blessing or European sophistication. It was purely, defiantly Australian. In a market locked in mortal combat between Ford and Holden, the Falcon GT lineage became tribal identity. You weren't just choosing a car, you were choosing a side in one of the world's great automotive rivalries. The Falcon GT is inextricably linked with the history of Australian sports sedan car production and with the evolution of Australian motor racing. The XA GT, though brief, was the apex. The XA GT's production ended in September 1973. a full year before the energy crisis would reshape the automotive world. By the time regulations tightened and the mood darkened, the XA had already made its mark. It would never be repeated with the same unbridled spirit. Subsequent Falcons would carry on the GT name sporadically, but they would never recapture that magical alchemy. The perfect storm of Australian design, engineering confidence, muscle car power, and cultural moment. The XA GT was lightning in a bottle, and we've been chasing the glow ever since. The Ford Falcon XA GT remains what it has always been. Proof that sometimes the best things in life are made from the boldest decisions, the tightest windows, and the fieriest ambitions. For 18 glorious months, Ford Australia owned the future. And we're still talking about it today. If you're as obsessed with automotive history as we are, with the cars that defined nations and eras, subscribe to motoriq-au for more documentaries that dig deeper into the legends and the lost classics. Next week, we're heading to Japan to uncover the rise of the Nissan Skyline GT-R, the car that changed everything about what a production engine could do. You won't want to miss it.